Hey y'all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good nighttime, good midnight hour. Welcome back. My name is Tamika Collins, and this here is my YouTube page. I thought I was about to yawn. I'm sorry. um, where we are reading the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, and y'all, we are in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, next chapter. We're in Deuteronomy. So, we recap, and we read Numbers, the 35th and the 36th chapter. We talked about being the door, be the door. Recap of 35 towns for the Levites, in which they were to be, the Levites were to be the center of the land. And so all the cities will be around them. All the tribes and things will be around them. Talked about cities of refuge, a hiding place. That's what the city of refuges were, or a hiding place. Chapter 36 talked about the women who inherit property. And this was brought on by the daughters of Zelophehad, who had no sons, and the daughters were said they had to marry within the tribe because land could not go out of the tribe. And so, and then I wanted to read the end of Numbers because, we are in the Life Application Study Bible. I got the large print so I can see some things with my glasses. But it says, chapter 36 commentary says, the book of Numbers covers 39 years and closes with the Israelites posed near the banks of the Jordan River with the promised land in sight. The wanderings in the wilderness have come to an end, and the people are preparing for their next big move, the conquest of the land. The Apostle Paul says that the events described in Numbers are examples that warn us and help us avoid the Israelites' mistakes. 1 Corinthians 10, 1 through 12. From their experience, we learn that unbelief is disastrous. We also learn not to long for the sinful pleasures of the past, to avoid complaining, and to stay away from all forms of sexual sin. We must not weaken our biblical beliefs by compromising them with our culture's values. If we choose to let God lead our lives, we should not ignore this message in the book of Numbers. All right, so that was the end of Numbers, and now we are in Deuteronomy. All right, and it has a little preface giving you a little bit of what you're going to be reading. And so the purpose of Deuteronomy is to remind the people of what God had done and encourage them to rededicate their lives to Him. The author is Moses, except for the final summary, which was probably written by Joshua after Moses' death. The original audience is the people of Israel, the new generation entering the promised land. It was written about 1406 BC. The setting is the east side of the Jordan in view of Canaan. The key verse is, understand therefore that the Lord your God is indeed God. He is the faithful God who keeps His covenant for 1,000 generations and lavishes His unfailing love on those who love Him and obey His commands. The key people here are Moses and Joshua. The place is the Arabah and Moab. And the special features in Deuteronomy includes many reminders to the Israelites and to all God's people of the blessings that come from following God's instructions. So, Deuteronomy, class reunions. It's Deuteronomy, and it starts off class reunions, photo albums, familiar songs in old neighborhoods, like longtime friends. They awaken our memories and stir our emotions. The past is a kaleidoscope of promises, failures, victories, and embarrassments. Sometimes we want to forget memories that were too painful. As the years pass, however, remembrances of unpleasant events usually fade away. But remembering can be healthy and helpful. Mistakes should not be repeated. commitments made must be fulfilled, and the memory of special events can encourage us and move us to action. The book of Deuteronomy is written in the form of a treaty between a king and his vassal states, typical of the second millennium BC. It calls Israel to remember who God is and what he has done. Lacking faith, the old generation had wandered for 40 years and died in the wilderness. They left Egypt behind but never knew the promised land. Then, on the east bank of the Jordan River, Moses prepared the sons and daughters of that faithless generation to possess the land. After a brief history lesson emphasizing God's great acts on behalf of his people, Moses reviewed the law. Then he restated the covenant, God's contract with his people. The lessons are clear because of what God has done. The Israelites should have hope and follow him. Because of what he expects, they should listen to and obey him. Because of who he is, they should love him completely. Learning these lessons will prepare them to possess the promised land. As you hear the message of Deuteronomy, remember how God has expressed his kindness in your life, and then commit yourself anew to trust, love, and obey him. All right, so what God has done for us, Moses' first address, chapter 1, 1 through 4, 43. Oh, this is going to be chapters 1 through 4. All right, God has led his people out of Egypt and through the great wilderness for 40 years. Now they stand ready to enter the promised land. But before the Israelites go into the land, Moses has some important advice to give them. He delivers his advice in three parts. In the first part, Moses reviews the history of God's previous care for the people of Israel. Through God's actions in the past, we can learn about the God we serve today. Chapter 1. Introduction to Moses' first address. These are the words that Moses spoke to all the people of Israel while they were in the wilderness east of the Jordan River. They were camped in the Jordan Valley near Suf, between Paran on one side and Tepel, Laban, Hazeroth, and Dizahad on the other. Normally, it takes only 11 days to travel from Mount Sinai to Kadesh Barnea, going by way of Mount Seir. But 40 years after the Israelites left Egypt, on the first day of the 11th month, Moses addressed the people of Israel, telling them everything the Lord had commanded him to say. This took place after he had defeated King Sihon of the Amorites, who ruled in Heshbon, and at Edrei had defeated King Og of Bashan, who ruled in Ashtaroth. While the Israelites were in the land of Moab, east of the Jordan River, Moses carefully explained the Lord's instructions as follows. When we were in Mount Sinai, the Lord our God said to us, "You have stayed on this mountain long enough. It is time to break camp and move. Go to the hill country of the Amorites and all to the neighboring regions of the Jordan Valley, the hill country, the western foothills, the Negev, and the coastal plain. Go to the land of the Canaanites, and to Lebanon, and all the way to the great Euphrates River. Look, I am giving all this land to you. Go in and occupy it, for it is the land the Lord swore to give your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to all their descendants." Moses continued, "At that time I told you you were too great a burden for me to carry all by myself. The Lord your God has increased your population, making you as numerous as the stars. And may the Lord, the God of your ancestors, multiply you 1,000 times more and bless you, as he promised. But you are such a heavy load to carry. How can I deal with all your problems and bickering? Choose some well respected men from each tribe who are known for their wisdom and understanding, and I will appoint them as your leaders. Then you responded, your plan is a good one. So I took the wise and respected men you had selected from your tribes and appointed them to serve as judges and officials over you. Some were responsible for 1,000 people, some for 100, some for 50, and some for 10. At the time I instructed the judges, you must hear the cases of your fellow Israelites and the foreigners living among you. Be perfectly fair in your decisions and impartial in your judgments. Hear the cases of those who are poor as well as those who are rich. Do not don't be afraid of anyone's anger for the decision you make in God's decision. For the decision you make is God's decision. Bring me any cases that are too difficult for you, and I will handle them. At that time, I gave you instructions about everything you were to do. Then, just as the Lord our God commanded us, we left from Mount Sinai and traveled through the great and terrifying wilderness, as you yourselves remember, and headed toward the hill country of the Amorites. Then arrived at Kadesh Barnea. I said to you, you have now reached the hill country of the Amorites that the Lord our God has given us. Look, he has placed the land in front of you. Go and occupy it as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has promised you. Don't be afraid, don't be discouraged. But you all come to me and said, first, let's send out scouts to explore the land for us. They will advise us on the best route to take and which towns we should enter. This seemed like a good idea to me, so I chose 12 scouts from each of your tribes. They headed for the hill country and came to the valley of Eshcol and explored it. They picked some of its fruit and brought it back to us, and they reported the land the Lord our God has given us is indeed a good land. But you rebelled against the command of the Lord your God and refused to go in. You complained in your tents and said, the Lord must hate us. That's why he has brought us here from Egypt to hand us over to the Amorites to be slaughtered. Where can we go? Our brothers have demoralized us with their report. They tell us the people of the land are taller and more powerful than we are, and their towns are large with walls rising high into the sky. We even saw giants there, the descendants of Anak. But I said to you, don't be shocked or afraid of them. The Lord your God is going ahead of you. He will fight for you, just as you saw him do in Egypt. And you saw how the Lord your God cared for you all among the way along the way as you traveled through the wilderness, just as a father cares for his child. Now he has brought you to this place. But even after all he did, you refuse to trust the Lord your God, who goes before you looking for the best places to camp, guiding you through with a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day. When the Lord heard your complaining, he became very angry. So he solemnly swore, not one of you from this wicked generation will live to see the good land that I swore to give your ancestors, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh. He will see this land because he has followed the Lord completely. I will give to him his descendants some of the very land he explored during his scouting mission. And the Lord was also angry with me because of you. He said to me, Moses, not even you will enter into the promised land. Instead, your assistant Joshua, son of Nun, will lead the people into the land. Encourage him, for he will lead Israel as they take possession of it. I will give you the land to your little ones, your innocent children. You were afraid they would be captured, but they will be the ones who occupy it. As for you, turn around now and go on back through the wilderness toward the Red Sea. Then you confess, we have sinned against the Lord. We will go into the land and fight for it. as the Lord our God has commanded us. So your men strapped on their weapons and thinking it will be easy to attack the hill country. But the Lord told me to tell you, do not attack it, for I am not with you. If you go ahead on your own, you will be crushed by your enemies. This is what I told you, but you would not listen. Instead, you again rebelled against the Lord's commands and arrogantly went into the hill country to fight. But the Amorites who lived there came out against you like a swarm of bees. They chased and battered you all the way from Seir to Hormah. Then you returned and wept before the Lord, but he refused to listen. So you stayed there at Kadesh for a long time. Let's see what chapter 2 is. We're going to stop there. I was going to read chapter 2. Let's see. Remembering Israel's wanderings, chapter 2. Then he turned around and headed back across the wilderness toward the Red Sea, just as the Lord had instructed me, and we wandered around in the region of Mount Seir for a long time. Then at last the Lord said to me, you have been wandering around in this hill country long enough. Turn to the north. Give these orders to the people. You will pass through the country belonging to your relatives, the Edomites, the descendants of Esau, who live in Seir. The Edomites will feel threatened, so be careful. Do not bother them, for I have given them all the hill country around Mount Seir for their property, and I will not give you even 1 square foot of their land. If you need food to eat or water to drink, pay them for it. For the Lord your God has blessed you in everything you have done. He has watched your every step through the great wilderness. During these 40 years, the Lord your God has been with you, and you have lacked nothing. So we bypassed the territory of our relatives, the descendants of Esau who live in Seir. We avoided the road through the Araba Valley that comes up from the Elath and Ezion Geber. Then, as we turned north along the desert route through Moab, the Lord warned us, do not bother the Moabites, the descendants of Lot, or start a war with them. I have given them Ar as their property, and I will not give you any of their land. A race of giants called the Emites had once lived in the land of Ar. They were as strong and numerous, as tall as the Anakites, another race of giants. Both the Emites and the Anakites are also known as the Rephaites, though the Moabites called them Emites. In early times of Horites had lived in Seir, but they had driven out and displaced but they were driven out and displaced by the descendants of Esau, just as Israel drove out the people of Canaan when the Lord gave Israel their land. Moses continued, then the Lord said to us, keep moving, cross the Zered brook. So we crossed the brook. 38 years passed from the time we had left Kadesh Barnea until we finally crossed the Zered brook. By then, all the men old enough to fight in battle had died in the wilderness, as the Lord had vowed would happen. The Lord struck them down until they had all been eliminated from the community. When all the men of the fighting age had died, the Lord said to me, today you will cross the border of Moab at Ar and enter into the land of the Ammonites, the descendants of Lot. But do not bother them or start a war with them. I have given them the land of Ammon to link to them as their property, and I will not give you any of their land. The area was once considered the land of the Rephaites who had lived there, though the Ammonites called them Zamzumites. They were also as strong and numerous and tall as the Anakites. But the Lord destroyed them so the Ammonites could occupy their land. He had done the same for the descendants of Esau who had lived in Seir, for he destroyed the Horites so they could settle there in their place. The descendants of Esau lived there to this day. A similar thing happened to the Caphtorites from Crete, invaded and destroyed the Avites who had lived in villages in the area of Gaza. Moses continued, then the Lord said, now get moving, cross the Heshbon, and I will give you this land. Attack him and begin to occupy the land. Beginning today, I will make people throughout the earth terrified because of you. When they hear reports about you, they will tremble with dread and fear. Moses continued from the wilderness of Kedemoth. I sent ambassadors to King Sihon of Heshbon with this proposal of peace. Let us travel through your land. We will stay on the main road and won't turn off into the fields or either side. On either side, sell us food to eat and water to drink, and we will pay for it. All we want is permission to pass through your land. The descendants of Esau who live in Seir allowed us to go through their country. So did the Moabites who lived in Ar. Let us pass through until we cross the Jordan into the land of the Lord our God has given us. But King Sihon of Heshbon refused to allow us to pass through because the Lord God, your God, made Sihon stubborn and defiant so he could help you defeat him, and he has now done. Then the Lord said to me, look, I have begun to hand King Sihon and his land over to you. Begin now to conquer and occupy his land. Then King Sihon declared war on us and mobilized his forces at Jahaz. But the Lord our God handed him over to us, and we crushed him, his sons, and all his people. We conquered all his towns and completely destroyed everyone, men and women and children. Not a single person was spared. We took all the livestock as plunder for ourselves, along with anything of value from the towns we ransacked. The Lord our God has helped us conquer Aroer on the edge of Arnon Gorg and the town in the Gorg, the whole area as far as Gilead. No town had walls too strong for us. However, we avoided the land of the Ammonites all along the Zabbok River and the towns in the hill country, all the places of the Lord our God had commanded us to leave alone. All right, y'all, that is Deuteronomy, the first and the second chapter. We'll be in the third, the next go round. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Look at my hair. Acting all special. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, and nighttime. Whenever, like I said, whenever you are tuning in, I hope you're being blessed. I'm being blessed. I'm loving reading and finding out from beginning to the end what's going on. It's giving me better clarity in, the people of the Bible and the things that they went through. And I'm having a wonderful time exploring and learning with you. I hope you have a great day. And thank you so much. We'll see you later. Peace.